All right, let's talk about a really powerful word, hegemony. Now, you've probably heard it thrown around, but what does it actually mean? We're going to dive right in because, trust me, once you get what hegemony is, it's kind of like getting a backstage pass to see how power really works in the world, often in ways you don't even see.
So, let's start with a big question. What is real power? I mean, is it just about having the biggest army, the most money? Well, the whole idea of hegemony suggests that the answer is way more subtle, and honestly, a lot more fascinating than that. It's not just about forcing people to do what you want. It's about creating a world where they want to do what you want. To really get to the bottom of this, we have to go back, way back. We're going to start by unpacking the original meaning of the word itself, which actually has its roots deep in ancient history. And believe it or not, the beginning is, well, it's pretty simple. The word hegemony comes from an ancient Greek word, hegemonia, and all it meant was leadership. That's it. At its heart, it's just about one group leading others. But, as you can imagine, the story gets a whole lot more complex from there. Okay, so take that simple idea of leadership, and now let's scale it up to the world of global politics. In international relations, a hegemon isn't just a powerful country doing its own thing. No, it's the leading state within a whole system of other states. And here's the key part. It creates and maintains a certain kind of social order, a set of rules and norms that pretty much everyone else just operates within.
And that idea of setting the rules brings us to the next, much deeper layer of all this. This is where hegemony goes way beyond simple leadership and turns into a kind of dominance that doesn't even have to flex its muscles all the time. We're talking about something called structural power. Okay, check this out. On the one hand, you've got coercive power. That's the obvious stuff, right? Military force, economic punishments, basically pushing people around to get your way. But then you have structural power, and this is the game changer. This is the power to set the rules of the game itself, to shape what other people even think is possible or what they should want. You know, it's the difference between winning a fight and designing the entire arena so you are always going to win.
So, what's in this toolkit for a country with structural power? Well, first off, it sits at the absolute center of the system. It's the hub of the wheel. And from that position, it gets to influence what other countries even want in the first place. This is incredibly efficient because it means you don't have to constantly use expensive and messy force to get things done. And of course, all of this is built on a foundation of massive resources, both people and materials.
And this quote right here just hits the nail on the head. It says, "The ability to shape other states' preferences and interests is just as important as the hegemon's ability to command power resources." Think about that. Getting others to want what you want. That is the ultimate power move. It's getting them to play your game, by your rules, and maybe even think it was their idea all along.
So, we've seen how one country can set the rules for all the others. But what if that same exact kind of invisible power, this power to shape what seems normal, is also at work inside our own societies? Well, that's the very question that fascinated an Italian thinker named Antonio Gramsci. He took this whole idea of hegemony and brought it from the world stage right into our culture, giving us this incredible concept of a war of position.
You see, for Gramsci, who was writing back in the 1930s, the most powerful form of control wasn't the army or the police. Not at all. He said it was in the world of culture and what he called civil society. That's all the institutions outside of the government, schools, the media, churches, community groups. For him, real hegemony was about getting a certain worldview to be so dominant that it just becomes common sense. Gramsci saw the fight against the dominant system of his day not as some quick, violent revolution, but as a long, drawn-out war of position. The goal wasn't just to grab state power. First, you had to win influence inside those very institutions of civil society, the places that shape how we all think and what we believe is even possible.
So let's make this super clear. A frontal assault is what you probably think of when you hear the word revolution, right? Storming the palace, a direct physical fight. But a war of position is a much longer, quieter campaign. It's all about winning the battle of ideas, in our schools, in our media, in all the places where a society's values are really made. So where is this war actually fought? Well, the battlefields are everywhere. It's in the way the state educates its people. It's in the way different social groups build alliances to create a shared understanding. It's about who gets to provide the moral and cultural leadership for a society. But the ultimate prize, the real high ground in this war, is shaping what everybody just accepts as normal, natural, as plain old common sense.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground here, from ancient Greece all the way to an Italian prison in the 1930s. So now, let's pull all these threads together. Let's synthesize these different layers of power to really understand what makes hegemony such a vital concept.
Now, it's really important to know that not everybody sees hegemony in the same way. For realist thinkers, it's pretty straightforward. It's about raw power, military, and economic dominance. For liberals, a powerful leader, a hegemon, can actually be a good thing, creating stability for everyone. But for the followers of Gramsci and other critical thinkers, it's that deep, complex struggle for leadership over a society's culture and ideas.
So if you take away just one thing, let it be this three-layered picture. Hegemony starts as simple leadership. Then it evolves into structural power, the ability to set the rules of the international game to your own advantage. And finally, at its deepest, most powerful level, it becomes cultural influence, the power to define reality itself, to shape what an entire society just accepts as common sense. It's the kind of power that works best when you don't even know it's there.
And that leaves us with one last question, a question for you to think about. Now that you understand these different layers of power, just look around. What are the unspoken rules, the common sense ideas that guide your life, your job, your country? What are the invisible rules that are shaping your world right now?